All right, everyone. All right, everyone. We'll sit around here, let a few people hop on in here. This is Patrick of the Daily Ember doing a live stream. This should only go about 30-45 minutes tops, is what I'm expecting. I've got a few video clips here on my Twitter that I shared to the side that I wanted to go over, along with a couple articles I shared. So I figured we'd go over that and just have a little laid back live stream today. If you weren't aware, Friday I do have an interview with Shahid Buttar, who is running against Nancy Pelosi in California. So that's something I'm looking forward to. That'll be a live stream here. That interview is taking place at 10 a.m. Central Time and 8 a.m. Pacific. So if you can't tune in, I know that's an early morning for some of you. Uh, it will be available to watch after the interview is conducted. And then last night, I just set up another interview with Joshua Collins, who's running out in Washington State for Congress. So he's going to be on to talk about his campaign as well. And I'm also working with the Anthony Clark campaign here in Chicago, as many of you know. And I'll be doing a live stream interview with them when we walk his district. June 7th, I believe, is the date for that. And then we'll also be scheduling a sit down interview as well. So, some things in the role in the near future to keep your eyes on and remember. So now that we're here, let's get started. So here's this video of Bernie Sanders fighting against the disastrous crime bill back in 1991, which was 3 years before the bill was originally passed. So, like I've been saying, we need to elect somebody that's been consistent with their, throughout their whole history of being a politician, and that's Bernie Sanders, because consistently this man has been fighting for some sort of criminal justice reform, and here he is. I mean, here he is. You know.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the McCulloch Amendment and, in fact, in strong opposition to this so-called crime prevention bill. Mr. Speaker, let us be honest. This is not a crime prevention bill. This is a punishment bill, a retribution bill, a vengeance bill. All over the industrialized world now, countries are saying, let us put an end to state murder. Let us stop capital punishment. But here, what we're talking about is more and more capital punishment. What we're discussing now is an issue where some of our friends are saying, we're not getting tough enough on the criminals. But my friends, we have the highest percentage of people in America in jail per capita of any industrialized nation on earth. We've beaten South Africa. We've beaten the Soviet Union. What do we have to do? Put half the country behind bars? Mr. Speaker, instead of talking about punishment and vengeance, let us have the courage to talk about the real issue. How do we get to the root causes of crime? How do we stop crime? Which is, in fact, a very, very serious problem in this country. And, Mr. Speaker, I've got a problem. I've got a problem with a president and a Congress which allows 5 million children to go hungry, 2 million people to sleep out on the streets, cities to become breeding grounds for drugs and violence. And they say, we're getting tough on crime. If you want to get tough on crime, let's deal with the causes of crime. Let's demand that every man, woman, and child in this country have a decent opportunity and a decent standard of living. Let's not keep putting poor people into jail and disproportionately punishing blacks. Time I thank you. Expired.
Woo-wee. Woo-wee is all I have to say to that. Now, again, this is something Bernie's been very consistent on fighting for. Like I said, is criminal justice reform. I'm trying to find it right here. I know I didn't post it on Twitter, but it was the breakdown of how many schools versus juvenile prisons that California alone has built in the last decade. And I want to say it's like 20 something juvenile prisons. I can't find it right now. It was from the Bernie Sanders campaign as well. He shared this a couple weeks back. But, you know, I can't find that. There's a couple things in there that he's mentioned. You know, we currently have the largest prison population out of any industrialized country. We've beat Russia to this day. We still beat China in how many people we have detained. You know, Saudi Arabia. You look around and we're trying to say that we're a democracy and all this stuff. We're trying to say that we're like the UK, we're like Denmark, we're like Switzerland and all this shit. When in reality, we're not. We're like Saudi Arabia, we're like Israel. Uh, you know that's what we are at this point. Uh, and another thing, I've talked about this in the live stream when we talked about if felons should be stripped of their right to vote. um, a majority of our prison population is nonviolent drug offenders, which is a whole nother thing. The war on drugs is a complete failure. And we need to start, reeling that in. And instead of criminalizing these drugs, we should open it up where our government can actually do proper research, where independent researchers can do their thing, and so forth, instead of criminalizing people for choosing to do something with their own bodies. So these are things we should be looking at moving forward. I think, there's a big push right now for the decriminalization of drugs. We've seen Colorado already this year. They decriminalized mushrooms, and they're going to be testing that for PTSD, depression, and addiction habits. So we're at a time right now where we're trying new stuff. We're experimenting. We're looking into things that uh, past generations feared or didn't fully understand, and I think we're moving in the right direction in that sense. Uh, but again, here's just more proof of Bernie Sanders continuing to be consistent throughout his whole career. Um, Again, it's something we need to look at. We need to make sure we reinstate the private prison ban through the federal government. Nobody should be profiting off of imprisoned people. That's just not, that shouldn't be a business. It shouldn't be a business because the same people with these private prisons that run what I'm talking about, like federal prisons, are also running detention camps for migrants coming from the border. And we all know how that's working currently. Yesterday, we just had the fifth migrant child die in the U.S. custody since December. Now, remind you, prior to December, the past 10 years, there hasn't been a single death of an immigrant while in the United States custody. That only just started under this recent administration, where we're also seeing people being kept under underpasses in El Paso, Texas. We're seeing overcrowding at these detention centers. We're seeing people stories of sexual assault and other assault happening at these detention centers. What I think I shared the article up at the top here last night. Well, here's another one actually. America has spent $5.9 trillion on wars in the Middle East since 2001. So, again, we've talked about this. We never have money for education. We never have money for universal health care. We never have money to build our roads, repair our streets, fix the water pipes in Flint. Anything that needs to get done, we don't have the money for. That's what we're told. But here we are, spending $5.9 trillion on wars in the Middle East and Asia since 2001. Which, reminder, if you go and look online, also studies show that terrorism has increased by up to five-folds since the war on terror started. So instead of what you'd imagine would happen from a war on terrorism, maybe declining, it instead has increased. And I'm no scientist or anything here, but I'm just gonna take a guess at maybe it's all those innocent civilians in schools and Doctors Without Borders. The United States and allies have been bombing in Yemen, in Syria, uh, Somalia. we're in about 8 different places. We've got 1,000 different military bases across the world. It's hard to keep up with all of it, but we try, and here we are. So, $5.9 trillion on wars, just wars alone. Imagine that. That's not even recycling money. That is burning money because you're never going to see that money come back. That none of this $5.9 trillion will you ever see come back to the taxpayers. It's gone. That went straight to the private military armed contractors, just like Raytheon. Like, for example, I did this on a podcast. We talked about how the main reason for us going to Yemen and selling the weapons to Saudi Arabia in the Yemen conflict was because there's a Raytheon arms dealer at the debate table with Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State, saying that we should sell these weapons to Saudi Arabia because it may hurt future sales. So again, it wasn't about this might be used wrong and kill innocent civilians. That wasn't the concern. It might hurt future sales. Oof. So I guess the only time Bush was honest was that time on video where he said that money trumps peace. And I mean, continuing to this day, we are still seeing that is very true within our government. And again, we talk about corruption in our system. If you want to get out that corruption, we need to ban any form of corporate lobbying, corporate money, or any sort of corporate interest being pushed on our politicians. We need to repeal Citizens United that allowed boatloads of money to start pouring into politicians' campaigns. For example, me, the average person, we can't donate over what I think it's. We got a $25,000 donation cap each election cycle, I believe it is. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. Um, but with Citizens United, that allows corporations and CEOs to funnel in endless amounts of money into a campaign without any caps. And that's not right. Why should corporations be able to spend endless amounts of money on a politician, but not the people that are electing these representatives to fight and represent them? It doesn't make any fucking sense. So let's go on to this article. We'll read some of the key points here. Like I said, the United States wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan have cost American taxpayers $5.9 trillion since they began back in 2001. And since 2001, we've also seen an attack on what? Social Security. We've seen an attack on Medicare. We've seen an attack on education. We've seen an attack on infrastructure. We keep cutting back on domestic spending to focus on our foreign military spending, which, again, if you look at any empire that has fallen, it is because we overstretch our military and cut back domestically. And that's what we're doing right here. So the figure reflects that the cost across the United States federal government since the price of war is not borne by the Defense Department alone. The report also finds that more than 480,000 people have died from the wars, and more than 244,000 civilians have been killed as a result of fighting. Additionally, another 10 million people have been displaced due to violence. So again, these are all, 240,000 civilians have been killed. Just civilians, innocent civilians killed during this war over there. That's 244,000 civilians' families that have been radicalized because their family members were killed while doing nothing, while not supporting the war, while not fighting in the war, just at home, out in the park, whatever they were doing, murdered. And then on top of that, you have the 10 million people who have been displaced from the violence. So, yes, there's going to be a good chunk of these 400,000 civilians that, their families already radicalized. But now you have 10 million people who have been displaced also from this violence. So that's not going to make us look good. And our humanitarian aid only comes in the form of stealing your resources. And that's what we're seeing again. I mean, examples now is Venezuela. Look what we're trying to do down there. We're trying to get in there, and John Bolton's made it very clear that the main interest down there is the oil for the U.S. So again, it's a resource war. We're just pushing and tugging. All right. So the U.S. wars and military action in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Pakistan cost American taxpayers $5.9 trillion since they began in 2001, according to a new study. That total is almost $2 trillion more than all federal government spending during the recently completed 2017 to 18 fiscal year. Now, the report, the Watson Institute of International Public Affairs at Brown University, also finds that 480,000 people have died as direct result of fighting. Over 244,000 thousand civilians have been killed, and another 10 million people have been displaced due to the violence. Now, the $5.9 trillion figure reflects the cost of the U.S. federal government since the price of war is not borne by the Defense Department alone, according to the uh, Netta Crawford, the study's author. Now, in addition to the money spent by the Pentagon, Crawford says in the report that it captures war-related spending by the Department of State, past and obligated spending for war veterans care, interest on debt incurred to pay for the wars, and the prevention and response of terrorism by the Department of Homeland Security. It breaks down like this, according to Crawford and the report. The total U.S. war-related spending through the fiscal year of 2019 is $4.9 trillion. $4.9 trillion. The other $1 trillion reflects estimates for the cost of healthcare for post 9/11 veterans. The Department of Veterans Affairs will be responsible for serving more than 4.3 million veterans by 2039. What's more, longer wars will also increase the number of service members who will ultimately claim veterans benefits and disability payments. The U.S. government spent $4.1 trillion during fiscal year of 2018, which ended September 30th, according to the Treasury Department. Now, the Defense Department accounted for 14.7% of that, and the Department of Veteran Affairs accounted for 4.4%. So again, the clearly right here, I just want to go to the author and be like, yeah, no shit, dumbass. Longer wars will increase the number of service members. Yeah, again, no shit. We've been at this war we're in currently for 15 years. There's people going into the war on terror over in Afghanistan, Syria, into Somalia, wherever we're at right now, that weren't around when this war started. They don't know what 9/11 was. They weren't there when it happened. That's who's currently fighting these wars. In Iran, we're currently spiraling into what seems like a conflict that's going to happen with Iran. That is going to be another endless war, from what I see. Nobody wants to go into this. We're seeing the UK, we're seeing Germany, and our allies say that the threat level has gone from nothing. Nothing has changed with Iran, but currently the United States is still pushing at them, still trying to, make Iran to seem like the aggressor, but that isn't the case. From every turn you look at it, the United States is the aggressors in this case. We're implying sanctions on Iran for no fucking reason. Uh, we've just been poking them with the stick, and it's just us trying to get them to bite back. So we have a reason to. Uh, 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 Sorry, I just got an email from Shahid. It's a campaign manager. Sorry about that. It just popped up. But yeah, here we are spending 4.9 or 5.9 trillion dollars on wars in the Middle East, being told we don't have money for infrastructure, being told we don't have money for our education to pay our teachers, right? Uh, Yet we have 5.9 trillion dollars just to throw away at murdering innocent civilians. So that, just showing our priorities. Boo boo. Let's see here. What else did I have? I know I shared some other articles that I was like, oh, I'm gonna come back and share this. Oh, here. Let's play this video so I can read over this email I just received real fast.
Washington, we the people are coming to take back Congress. And we're bringing with us some big ideas like Medicare for all and the Green New Deal. We did it in New York. We did it in Minnesota. We're doing it on the national stage, and now we're bringing that voice back to San Francisco. My name's Shahid Buttar. I'm running for Congress. I'm an immigrant. I'm a Muslim. I grew up in rural Missouri. When I was 16 years old, my family lost our house as I graduated from high school. I got my undergrad degree while working full-time after 10 years of night school. Then I went to Stanford to study and teach law. I've fought for your rights for 20 years, from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. as a constitutional lawyer, policy advocate, writer, educator, and grassroots organizer. And now I'm running to serve the people of San Francisco by fighting corporate corruption in Congress. We don't have the corporate cash that's kept Nancy Pelosi in office for 30 years. In fact, we just don't take corporate money. That's why we're mobilizing the community, meeting in living rooms and neighborhood centers, why we're out in the streets fighting for change, demanding universal health care, fighting for your children and grandchildren's right to a future free from climate crisis and a government for, of, and by the people instead of the 1%. A voice for school teachers, working class families, and immigrants, the 99%. This movement is just getting started. After 30 years of the same representation, San Francisco deserves a champion willing to return our city to the front lines of the progressive movement. Our city stands for inclusion and pride, peace and justice, and environmental sustainability. We can't wait another 30 years for our leaders to evolve on climate change. Delay is no better than denial. The time for action was yesterday. America is the only advanced country in the world where getting sick can leave you homeless, and higher education buries people in debt for the rest of their lives. The only voices we need in Congress are ones who will take action to fix that. You have a choice. Either let profit-driven corporations destroy our future, or instead vote to reclaim this country for the people. Vote for Shahid Buttar in the March 2020 primary, and join our campaign in the meantime.
I mean, it's a great campaign. But right now, it looks like the interview I was talking about earlier today is getting postponed with Shahid because he's got a busy, conflicting schedule. So I'll let you guys know when he's gonna come on. It looks like we're just pushing it back a week. So maybe I can see if Joshua Collins can come on sooner for an interview. But I know he's a truck driver, so he's driving around most of the time during the week. So I'm pretty sure the weekends are the only best days for him. So let's see what else. Here's one. Now this is something because Donald Trump recently said that he's always bragging about the economy doing good, that he's boosting our economy, he's bringing jobs back to America, he's helping the working class. Um, but it's all bullshit, of course. I mean, surprise, surprise. Currently, a new report came out. I've talked about this also. 13 million children in the United States are currently living under the poverty line. And in that also includes families. These are children in families that are living under poverty. 13 million. Now, that video I shared you earlier today, when we first started with Bernie Sanders talking about the crime bill, he mentioned 5.9 million children living in poverty. That was back in 1991. Right now, 2019, 13 million children are currently living in poverty. So we still have not fixed the problem. We didn't do shit. We might have slapped a few band-aids on it along the way, but those band-aids fell off literally after the first shower. So, let's dive into this NPR article real fast. Many rural Americans struggle with financial insecurity and access to healthcare. Surprise, surprise. Again, these are only countries or stories you can find happening in the United States. No other industrialized country will you read about somebody losing their house because they can't afford a medical bill, because they can't, afford to feed their family. That doesn't happen anywhere else because people have a better standard of living outside of the United States. Yes, that's right. We're not number one. We're number one in having the worst education. We're number one in having the worst healthcare. We're number one at invading countries that don't need to be invaded, but making sure our own citizens are taken care of. Well, we fall pretty far back on that one. Now, polling by NPR finds that white rural Americans are mostly satisfied with life. There is a strong undercurrent of financial insecurity that can create very serious problems for many people living in rural communities. Now, the findings come from two surveys NPR has done with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health on day-to-day life and health in rural America. After a major poll we did last fall found a majority of 55% rural Americans rating their local economy as only fair or poor, we undertook a second survey early this year to find out more about the economic insecurity and health. The poll looked beyond the known factors of job loss and decades-long flight of young people to more urban areas. Several findings stand out. A substantial number, 40% of rural Americans struggle with routine medical bills, food, and housing, and about half, 49%, say they could not afford to pay an unexpected $1,000 expense of any type. So, first of all, 40% of Americans right now, 40% of Americans in rural America say that they struggle just for medical bills, food, and housing. Those are basic life necessities right there that people are struggling to pay for and get by with in America, the richest country in the goddamn world. But you know where all that money's going instead of helping out these communities? It's going to our military budget, which keeps fucking increasing each year. By the way, that Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and centrist sellout Democrats alike have all voted to improve. Yeah, so they can keep saying they're fighting against Trump all they want, but they have voted alongside Trump multiple times since he's been elected. There's no resistance. They are part of the Mick resistance happening from the Democratic Party. Democratic Party continues to cave to the GOP because of the centrists that are controlling the party. We need to vote out Nancy Pelosi. We need to get out Chuck Schumer. All these old, ancient, should be Republicans that are in the Democratic Party need to go. So, access to healthcare. One quarter of respondents, 26%, said that they have not been able to get healthcare when they needed it at some point in recent years. That's despite the fact that nearly 9 in 10, 87%, have health insurance of some sort. A level of coverage that is higher now than it was a decade ago, in large part owing to the Affordable Care Act and expansion of Medicaid in many states. Was there any time in the past 10 years that you needed healthcare but did not get it, or did you get healthcare every time you needed it in the past year or past few years? So again, here we are. Uh, People, you know, I've talked about this also before. When people decide not to go to the doctor early on, because they're worried about the costs, it's only going to make whatever happening worse, possibly down the long run. You're just postponing going to get diagnosed, to get treatment, and whatever's wrong is only going to get worse. Now, of course, this isn't the same when we're talking about like a common cold or something. No, I'm saying like if someone suspects they might have asthma, they suspect that they might have diabetes, cancer, whatever the case be. If you don't go and get that diagnosed early on because you're scared that you might not be able to afford it, it is only going to make this more expensive down the road. Um, s- so, I mean, to each their own. It's not right, but pushing it back how we are right now and we're seeing it isn't going to make the bills any cheaper. Now, at a time when we thought we had made major progress in reducing barriers to needed healthcare, the fact is that 1 in 4 still face these barriers is an issue of national concern, says Robert J. Blendon, co-director of the survey and professor of health policy and political analysis at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Either it is still not affordable for them, or the insurance they have doesn't work, or they can't get care from the health providers that are in their community. Now, of those not able to get health care, when they needed it. The poll found that 45% could not afford it, and 23% said that the healthcare location was too far or too difficult to go to, and 22% said that they could not get an appointment during the hours they needed. So, again, the private healthcare industry has fucked up our whole way of what we knew as doctors and healthcare in this country. Right now, we've seen people. You might have been going to one doctor or the same doctor your family's been going to your whole life, and then once we got Obamacare and some of these other bills passed through, you might have lost them. Suddenly you're hopping around. Your insurance keeps changing what doctors you can go to, who you can see, and that gets frustrating to most people. And like it says, it's too difficult to get to, it's too far to get to, and some just couldn't get an appointment scheduled in the hours that they needed. So we have such a restrictive healthcare service here. We pay the most per capita out of any industrialized country for our healthcare, yet we have the worst coverage out of any country. There's a reason none of these countries that have Medicare for all or a single payer system or something in that area haven't gone back to a private healthcare industry. It's because the private healthcare industry is shit. It's bullshit. It doesn't work. Profiting off of people's lives isn't good. It doesn't work. Making people go into poverty because they can't afford their insulin that is skyrocketing in prices in the United States only isn't right. We need to abolish the private healthcare industry. We need to move forward with a single payer Medicare for all system. We need to make sure that everyone in this country can go to whatever doctor they want and not have to worry about if they'll be able to afford the bills, to be able to pay for their house, whatever. We need to make sure we're fighting for this change. Now, um, here's some more we have. Of those not able to get healthcare, oh, sorry, load it back up. Now, D. Davis, president and founder of the Center of Rural Strategies in Whitesburg, Kentucky, says poverty and ill health are endemic where he lives. People in this congressional district have the shortest lifespan in the United States. We also are the poorest, Davis said. We are poor and sicker. But he adds the Affordable Care Act, which in Kentucky brought an expansion of Medicaid to many previously uninsured residents, went a long way in helping many rural communities take care of recurring problems. We're not out of the woods yet, but the ACA certainly changed the landscape, Davis said. Lots of rural people benefited from the ACA, he adds, and if that progress were to be lost, he said, we're in trouble. So here's the breakdown. Was blank a reason you did not get the healthcare you needed? Asked of the 26% of respondents who said they experienced healthcare access problems. Whopping 45% say that they could not afford the healthcare. 23% said that healthcare location was too difficult or too far to get to. 22% say that they could not get an appointment during hours they needed. And then 19% say that they could not find a doctor who would take their health insurance. So again, that's the main issue here. You shouldn't be struggling to find a doctor because your insurance doesn't work with them, doesn't cover you there. This is something we need to fix. I mean, our system's so damn broken. I can go over this all day, and you guys will understand. We'll get down to it, and you'll see what is happening in this country isn't happening anywhere else. It's not happening. We have a declining lifespan here in the United States. So, again, we have $5.9 trillion we can dump on war, but not on a Medicare for all system, obviously. Here's one. Here's what I know I shared to talk about. If you guys didn't see this one, well, let's go. This will be the last article I'll go over before I close up and wrap up this live stream. So thanks for anybody that's joined and watched. It's been fun. It's been a good chat. So here we go. Bernie Sanders will attend Walmart's annual meeting to push for higher pay and other labor reforms, which, again, fantastic. He did it for Amazon. It worked with Amazon. He did it with Disney. Worked with Disney. So, here we go. Senator Bernie Sanders will attend Walmart's annual meeting and introduce a measure to give workers a seat on the retailer's board. Sanders has long pushed Walmart to boost their benefits for workers and is trying to appeal to their labor during his 2020 presidential bid. Now, Senator Bernie Sanders will take his fight against against Walmart closer to home. The Vermont Independent and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate will attend the retailer's annual shareholders meeting in Arkansas next month, a campaign spokeswoman said Tuesday. He will push to boost pay and benefits for workers and help introduce a measure to give hourly employees a spot on Walmart's board. If hourly workers at Walmart were well represented on its board, I doubt you would see the CEO of Walmart making over 1,000 times more than its average worker, Sanders told the Washington Post, which first reported the news. Now, in a statement, Walmart said it will respond to specific shareholder proposals once they are formally presented at the June 5th meeting. If Senator Sanders attends, we hope he will approach his visit not as a campaign stop, but as a constructive opportunity to learn about the many ways we're working to provide increased economic opportunity, mobility, and benefits to our associates, as well as our widely recognized leadership on environmental sustainability, the company said. Sanders has long pushed Walmart, the largest U.S. retailers by sales, to hike its minimum wage to $15 an hour. He introduced a bill last year aiming to push the company to raise workers' pay. The senator has cited the Walton family, relatives of the Walmart founder Sam Walton, who own about half of the company's shares, as evidence for a rigged economy and a need to raise taxes on the wealthy. Sanders' latest push to change Walmart's practices comes as the roughly 24 candidates in the Democratic field jostle up to win worker support. In a party increasingly focused on populist economic ideas, the candidates vying to challenge President Donald Trump next year have tried to cast themselves as the best option to boost wages and benefits such as health care and parental leave for workers. Which, reminder, the United States has no required parental leaves that companies have to give their employees. Again, another thing we're number one at that no other country does. Democratic presidential contenders who broadly back a $15 minimum wage have put pressure on major companies early in the campaign. Sanders, Cory Booker of New Jersey, and former Housing and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro and Washington Governor Jay Inslee plan to join striking McDonald's workers during the burger chain's annual meeting Thursday, according to Fight for 15, which advocates for a higher pay floor. Several candidates, such as Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, also supported workers on strike from grocer Stop and Shop earlier this year. Sanders will vie with Warren and former Vice President Joe Biden, among others, to support organized labor. Biden got a major union endorsement from the International Association of Firefighters shortly after he launched his campaign this month. Organized labor traditionally backs Democratic candidates, but Trump performed better with union members in 2016 than Republicans have in recent elections and hopes to keep that support in 2020. Last month, he argued union members love Trump, even if what he called Du's crazy union leadership does not. Walmart and McDonald's workers are not unionized despite some efforts to organize. Walmart says it employs about 1.5 million hourly associates in the U.S. So there's not too much Bernie said outside of what we read here. I'm hoping he's going to bring up the fact that Walmart finds ways in loopholes where they don't have to pay their employees properly. Therefore, they have to rely on food stamps and other government assistance to get by, even if they're working a full-time job. I hope this goes well. I think it will. Bernie's pretty consistent in this area on getting these corporations to cave over and fall. Uh, in the long run, it should just be a boycott of Walmart is what we need to do. But again, people are boycotting Walmart. You're boycotting Amazon. You can go to a local mom and pop shop if you can find one nowadays, but most of the time those have closed down because of these major companies. But before we hide on off here. My next interview I have, unless the one missing his name. Oh my gosh, Batar. Since that one got rescheduled, my next interview right now is next Saturday, June 1st at 10 a.m. Pacific and noon Central Time. That's with Joshua Collins, who's a Democrat running for Congress in Washington State. So that'll be good. Make sure to follow him on Instagram. Uh, but that's all I have for you guys on this video. As always, I'll give you more as I learn more. Um, if you like what you saw, if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please hit that subscribe button. Follow me on the Twitter. Follow me on Instagram at the Daily Ember, and you can become a monthly supporter of the show and page on Patreon for $3 or $5 a month at patreon.com/the Daily Ember. So that's all I have for you guys today. If you liked what you heard, again, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And this has been your Daily Ember.